Greetings and blessings to each and every one of you, wherever you are in this beautiful world. Another program of The Flow is about mental flow today, as we've already started our discussion about flow, how it is a magical power inside of all of us and how it connects us to the universe and the way that the system is flawlessly moving, and how as human beings, as people with a thought process, with action process, we can get on our own way of flow. And the purpose of all of these programs are how to figure out, be in balance, be in an equilibrium with everything, and how to flow within this system in a way that we're really enjoying it, just like a surfer who flows on the waves and knows how to get on them, although the waves could be really big and scary, but still the surfer can get on them, enjoy the wave, come down and get on again. So this is the process of our being. As we are in the flow of life, we get into obstacles, we move over them, we try to make the best out of them, or hopefully enjoy them, in my opinion, because every challenge, once is resolved, brings with it a sense of triumph, a sense of peace, a sense of freedom, and it encapsulates our powers in that way. So you can see how this concept is important. The last couple of programs we spoke about the physical flow and how this physicality in our fitness, in our food, in our sex life, in our sleep is at the base of all of this energetic flow. Now we're going to the second part of it. As you're familiar with the wheel of well-being and the balancing of the wheel, there are 8 components that we are following through in every process of life on a daily basis in order to gain the optimum productivity, the optimum joy and happiness that we can experience. And in order to do that, we need to pay attention to all of these 8 areas of the flow as we're discussing the mental flow today. So what is mental flow? It's really saying that your brain is in charge. You see, our body is connected to a brain, which is the part of this body. However, it has a higher capacity or capability for connecting, for downloading information, for putting us in a different setting outside of our body, within the world and within the environment. So you see how important the function of the brain is. Every organ of the body is important. However, all of the neurons, all of the nervous system somehow connects to the brain, to the different layers of the brain, from the spine into the reptilian brain, to the mammalian brain, and to the cortex and the prefrontal cortex, which these are the areas that we still develop and discuss as we move along these programs. So with the brain flow, or the brain in charge, we can be a little bit confused with the mind versus the brain, because the words that we commonly use, your mind, your brain, it resembles each other, but it's not the same, so let's differentiate between the mind and the brain first before we can get into the particular areas of the brain and how the brain flow is discussed by us. So the mind is a relational piece. If we use the example of the computers and the internet and the programs that we have, let's say the hardware is the body, the physical, and then obviously in this hardware there is a processor, which is our brain. This processor within this hardware system is built in a certain way that it can have a certain amount of memory, a certain amount of speed, a certain amount of capabilities to perform. So in our humanistic body, we have been genetically predisposed to certain intelligence, certain capabilities that is at the base level. However, the mind comes into the picture when we are connecting this system, this processor, to the outside world and to the environment and to everyone else around us. So just like an internet connection that we have, first we need to be able to send signals to connect to a modem and to connect to a certain global system that gives us that kind of bandwidth to process all of the information. This part is the mind connection. So the mind is really the interrelational embodiment of all of the information that we are receiving, processing, utilizing, and put it out in the world in a relational way of our unit with the rest of the world. Okay, so you can see that the mind is much more comprehensive than the brain in this way, but again, without the brain that is fluid and has its own algorithm and connection and ease into processing information, we cannot have a healthy mind. In other ways, if we would like to discuss mind versus brain, the brain would be much more physical, and then the mind would be much more psychological. So this is actually the conduit between our body and our psychological being, which we'll be discussing in the next part, which is in emotional flow. And that becomes a lot more comprehensive. As you will notice, we're building from the physical all the way to the financial, which is the end result, what we gain out of this whole system, and how this productivity comes together. So I hope you're patient with me, and then we go through all of these steps one by one. These are described in Balancing the Wheel book. However, I feel a lot better kind of talking about them, going through each one of them with you in more detail. Reading the book will help. I hope that this will just give you more emphasis on what we're discussing, and you can ask me any questions you have about parts that is still unknown as we move on forward in this program. So today's program, as we talked about already, is mental flow, and this mental flow is realistically is the brain functioning, is the brain flow. And the brain is responsible for certain things because, as we said, it has a certain capacity, and it has some predisposed ways of intelligently processing according to the capacities and capabilities that we have. So now there are 9 subjects that I would like to bring up. I'm pretty sure there are more than this, but these 9 to me are very important to be discussed as parts of the brain and how this brain regulates and goes forward. One is attention. Our mind is designed to bring attention to things, and I'm going to have an exercise for you at the end of this to show you how this attention or focus can be given. And focus is the second one. So attention is general, the awareness, but the focus is just more detailed oriented and very precise, going into something. So through attention, we just bring our attention on a subject. Through focus, we just laser focus it on a particular situation, and the mind can go deeper into like a microscope, just look at something at a bigger scale, and then under the microscope it's going to be evaluating it and analyzing it. So this evaluation is the third part that we attribute to the brain. So the mind as a processor has the capability to analyze and evaluate something, to see how this is working, how this is processing. There is a calculation process, which now our intelligence brings us to this fourth element, which is calculation. We can just mathematically get into details of the algorithms of things and just be aware of this calculation through our mind, and it has this capability. Now, in order to do all of these, there is another part of the brain that is really helpful, which is our memory. So the memory is the filing system for all of these calculations, how we have put them together, how we have evaluated, analyzed it, and brought it to our focus. So in order to have all of these used again and continuously brought forward, we have a memory that this memory is short-term and long-term. However, again, as a whole together, they encapsulate the data that we have already calculated, and they keep it there, and we can utilize it later. And that takes us to reasoning now based upon the memories and now the new experiences that the system is facing. Now we are able to start putting things together and make conclusion, make results, make an understanding of how something can go, which is a thinking process. Again, think of it still within the system without much of the outside resources. However, when the outside resources are connected, we're still doing the same thing because the brain is processor. The brain is doing it. The mind has more values to it, which again, it's outside influences in different ways and subconscious. The brain is conscious, the way that we're discussing it, but the subconscious and the psychological well-being, they go into the mindset. And then there is a different phase after the reasoning and after the conclusions are made. There must be comprehension. Comprehension is an additional layer of this brain functioning into diagnostically realizing it, and again putting it back to the memory in a way that is more evolved, in a way that's more classified and it's put together. So it's not now just the information that we were collecting and the data that we had. Now we have a more understanding, a bigger concept of things as we are comprehending the situation and we're going forward. The next important aspect of the brain is differentiation. Now, the brain again is required to differentiate between the different issues that it has comprehended. So it needs to compare and contrast and understand the differences, and that is so important in our being. That's how we have evolved from the primary homeless and shelterless and naked human beings on earth to where we are today, and we have gained everything we have through differentiation. We have been able to realize what works and what doesn't work, and how this works and how this doesn't work, and they just together they have brought us more ways of coming forward and dealing with issues in life. And the last one, which completes it all together, is the processing. So we constantly we're in a loop in this brain that it processes all of the internal and external information as it comes in, and just takes some things out or some things in, and just adds and subtracts from the system accordingly. So the hardware is responsible for putting everything together, processing it, because the processor is part of this hardware, and then it just gets all of the information flowing. Now we can use this system in connections with others and with subjects and with everything else. So I have an exercise for you to expand the learning. So this is called the learning state, and the learning state is a brain capability. The word Hakala comes from the Hawaiian, actually Hana part of Hawaii, and this has been a traditional way of expanding knowledge, expanding wisdom for them. And the science of neuro-linguistic programming, or in other words NLP, has borrowed it, has learned from it, and has been using it as an exercise in increasing our capabilities in learning. So I want you to, hopefully you're not driving, where you're sitting, I want you to just find a place above your eye view. Let's say if you're in a room, pay attention to the crossing of the wall and the ceiling. So where they join each other, keep your eyes focused on that line and find a spot in that place, just one point. And as you're just looking up to that point, okay, and your eyes are just focused on that point above there, As you are focusing, you will notice that eventually your eyes field of vision gets larger. You can start seeing that from that point that you were only razor focusing on, your mind is expanding to higher parts of this space. So it goes across to the right and the left, and your field of vision becomes much wider as we are discussing this. This is an exercise that you need to sit down and pay attention and give it a good 5 minutes of time at least. So just sit there and find that point, and in that state, I'm sure you've come across this feeling before. When you're pondering or thinking about something, you notice that your eyes just roll up. The eyes are really important in the processes of the brain. As we have discussed in EMDR, the eye movement brings the memories forward, and the eye rolling up, it kind of takes it out of the mundane, out of the stuck positions that you're in, and just expands your learning capacity, the space that you can absorb, the space that you can take. Please try it and see how it works for you. It has worked for me in many different times that I have used it, and I still use it. I hope that's useful to you. It's a very simple practice which helps you a lot in expanding your learning capability or opening your mind to take in new information and comprehend it. Very good. So based upon that, now we can just understand that the brain flow is doable, is possible, if we give ourselves the time and the space, and we know how to do this, which again, first is the physical part of it. We cannot have a brain functioning without the physical part of it being taken care of. The things that can get on the way of the brain health are a lot of diseases or a lot of mental health situations. Let's say if the aging process brings Alzheimer's disease or dementia, these are factors that they run down the system and they bring it to less productivity, and the flow is going to be less. So that's some of the limitations. If you have depression or anxiety disorder, schizophrenia, manic depression, or bipolar disorder, in other words, if you have these kind of mental and physical issues that they combine together, they can affect your brain. Pain can affect your brain tremendously. So if anything is bothering you, taking you away from enjoying life and having a clear view of your brain, please do not hesitate to work with experts. And we need to differentiate. The brain work by itself is mostly a psychiatrist work, but when we go to the mind is more evolving to a psychologist kind of a work. So let's understand that these two are together working and not separately. And in the next program, we'll be discussing more of that. I hope this is helpful in expanding your horizons into learning and keeping a clear mind. Willow Wellbeing is an organization dedicated to bringing wellness and well-being and joy into life by clearing all the obstacles that get on the flow of things. My book, Balancing the Wheel, has all of this information. There is an audio version of it on audiobooks.com that has all of the practices that we're discussing in it. And if you have any questions for me or my lovely wife, Coach Bonnie, who she is an NLP specialist, we are able to address all of these questions and concerns privately with you. Have a blessed time, and we'll see you soon again, continuing with more of the flow situation in different realm of our well-being, which is the next topic will be our emotional flow. All of these subjects will be repeatedly coming together. However, each one of them is importantly separate from each other, and I hope that you can keep that in your beautiful mind. Have a blessed day. Raise your vibration and re-engage with life. Find balance and reconnect with joy. Your vehicle is balancing the wheel, and we're here to support you in becoming more happier, healthier, and successful. wheelofwellbeing.com or drsadigh.com.